We are going to talk some divisional round playoffs. What a weekend! Incredible. The best football weekend. I've been watching football since I've been like almost 6 years old. So we're talking 50 years, and has never ever been a weekend like this. Welcome those who are coming in. Appreciate that you're here. We're going to talk about these games, recap them a little bit. Certainly take questions if you have them. Can answer the best of my ability. Anything we have. What up? What up? Yep. Nice to see everybody. So I'm going to stall a little bit the meeting, let some people come in here, but let's get rolling pretty quickly. Glad to see everybody coming up on the stream here. So any questions, put them in as we go. So we're going to talk about all four of the games. We'll talk about some of the obvious things, some of the not obvious things. We're a fantasy site, so we'll have fantasy impact on some of these players, some things that we learn. We're always trying to learn, trying to get ready for next year's fantasy season, next week's DFS, the prop betting. We'll get that all set here. Also, quick shout out to the Rotowire show started last week back on Sundays on Sirius XM, Fantasy Channel 87. I'm on Saturdays and Sundays, 1 to 3. We'll be on through the playoffs. Excited for that. Let's start. So, first game, Bengals and the Titans. What a thriller there. 19-16. The Bengals pull off the road victory. So, first of all, Tennessee held their identity. They ran 27 times. They passed 24 times, completely within their identity. The score was close the whole way. They were driving in the last minute before the turnover from Tannehill. So it was going well to script for them. So really no knock on them losing their identity here. Problematic things. Look, we saw with Ryan Tannehill earlier in the year when Derrick Henry was healthy. The play action game last year when they had Arthur Smith as a coach was so supremely designed and executed. It was a thing of art. In the coaching, Todd Downing taking over this year, the crispness of the play action game wasn't there. The scheming of the players, the placement of the players, how they got other players integrated. It just wasn't the same level of coaching. Not all play action setups are created equal. And I think that was the biggest thing. Tannehill had great defined reads last year. Because of the scheming, those same defined reads weren't there. Now, certainly A.J. Brown and the in-breaking routes is always going to be there. He's an elite superstar, and when you use him there, that works well. Now, the very first play of that game, when we saw the play action fake, I think most people who studied this game just knew that the Bengals would look for play action. Because Derrick Henry, he's going to run. He hasn't run in 9 weeks. Going to hand him the ball. And they went play action, and the play got jumped, interception right away. I think the Bengals just knew it was coming, and they sat on it. They sat on the route, and they just had – it was clear because it was jumped so quickly. So I think it was just pretty predictable, even though it was an unpredictable play. But realistically, Derrick Henry was fine. His yards per carry stunk. It was 3. But the problem we see – and we see this sometimes. I mean, obviously, he's an elite player, one of the best we've ever seen. But he gets cute sometimes. On the 2-point conversion, he danced, didn't just run the ball in. And then when he missed the 4th down, now on the 3rd down play, it was problematic as Ryan Tannehill runs the 3rd down play. When give it to Derrick Henry twice, you need 1 yard. I know Tannehill's a decent athlete. I get that. But you got Derrick Henry, it's short yardage, and they didn't choose to go there. On 4th down, though, again, Henry dances a bit in the backfield, and you're a power runner. Put your head down and go. Not that I need to tell Derrick Henry this, but we see it now and again. Power backs trying to get cute, and it costs them because as great as his elusiveness is, that's not his strength. So, A.J. Brown, look, next year when you're doing your fantasy drafts, the only rub is this. 2 straight years, he's missed significant time with injuries, different injuries. Now, the chest injury, we can let that one go. That was an oddball injury, but he's had hamstring injuries, he's had knee issues. I think even a foot was in there at one point. The injuries are piling up early in his career. He's a very physical player. And I think he's one of the most talented players in the NFL. And if I could be injury agnostic, he would be one of the first few receivers off the board, especially if I knew he's going to get more targets. Now, the target share is the problem, too, because this is a team that probably continues to have an identity where they run more than they pass. So that's a little bit of a knock on the potential volume where A.J. Brown really can't keep up with the Justin Jeffersons of the world in terms of target share. But as we saw, Brown had a ridiculous 38% target share, but they did it right. And they also were smart in that they only threw the majority of their passes to Brown and Julio. Very few other players were involved in the passing attack. And to use your best weapons, I think Tennessee planned that out well. Use Henry, use A.J. Brown, and then a lesser degree, we use Julio Jones. And overall, it was a good plan. Now, the Bengals, DJ Reader's a heck of a run defender back to his days of the Texans. Very, very underrated. There was concern Larry Ogunjobi was out for the Bengals, but DJ Reader, he's a big man and he shows up to play. And Derrick Henry on a number of times was stopped directly by DJ Reader running the middle. Henry may be a big man, but he's no DJ Reader, right? Reader, he's a big dude. So anyway, it was very good that they were able to hold that down. Tennessee, though, 3 interceptions, and you can't have that. When you're a team that's playing with a heavy run script, you're playing for a lower scoring game, the turnovers obviously decrease your probability for victory. So the week off, I don't think that meant much of anything for them. I mean, people might say rust. I don't think so. It's what we saw from them much of the season. They capitalized on many things. This is one of those games they just didn't capitalize where they could. Now, on the other side of the ball, everybody loves the 9 sacks that front 4 put up. They blitzed a little, but they didn't blitz a lot. The 4 guys were they occasionally brought an extra rusher. But Jeffrey Simmons, obviously, what was crazy about this is he has 4 sacks. He was only credited with 5 pressures. Usually when we see a guy with 4 sacks, he had a double-digit pressures in the backfield the whole game. So the success rate was really a big hit. So if there are reports, like a PFF puts out something this week, and you see the pressure rate is uncharacteristically low for that game, it would be because they got home on such a high percentage of their pressures that it made it look like they were in the backfield every snap. Now, what did the Bengals do right? So the first thing was they changed their identity. We talked about this in last week's stream. Not just early, but through week like 13 or 14, they were a run-first team. They were protecting Joe Burrow. I think they weren't sure what his knee was going to be like in terms of functional mobility in the pocket, and Joe Mixon was the centerpiece of the offense. At one point, it was clear they became very comfortable that Joe Burrow had the functional mobility, and they wanted to put the offense on the back of their superstar quarterback. And it's exactly what they did. They did that consistently down the stretch. They ran the ball 18 times. They threw it 37, despite all the sacks. Now, what was irresponsible about their attack was that they didn't give him any help on the offensive line. They kept their 5 blockers. They very rarely put an extra blocker in. They sent C.J. Uzomah out on routes quite a bit. The 3 receivers were over 90% snap share each. So it was 11 personnel, no protection, and they could have at least done a little bit to help Burrow. I get the 3 receiver sets as a function and a staple of what Zach Taylor does from his days with Sean McVay. But at some point, the extra blocker, you got T. Higgins, you got Jamar Chase. That's enough. Give your quarterback a little time. Now, they were fortunate. And Burrow was very smart in how he attacked the Tennessee defense. Jamar Chase only saw 6 targets, and that was because of the amount of pressure Burrow was under. Chase did catch a couple shorter intermediate passes, made noise after the catch, but under that type of pressure, you've got to get the ball out somewhat quickly. So even though it was a tough tight end matchup, C.J. Uzomah had 8 targets. Joe Mixon out of the backfield, very good safety. Val had 7, and then T. Higgins led the team with 9. T. Higgins, intermediate area, short area, just catching those crossers, drag routes, and then making yardage after the catch. So the game plan was very good, even though Burrow got hammered over and over. The passes he made helped them have some success moving the ball. Now, they continued to break down in the red zone again, just like they did against the Raiders. They're kicking a lot of field goals. They've been able to get away with that for 2 weeks. That's a little problematic if when they're playing the Chiefs this week. They're not going to be able to kick all these field goals and think they're going to hang that way. So that's problematic. But as I said earlier, the version of the Bengals offense that you've seen in the playoffs is the one they established late in the season. We will expect to see that again against the Chiefs next week. This team has now made the run very secondary in their approach to their benefit, absolute benefit here. At any point, if anybody has questions, just go ahead and pop those on, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Let's move to the 49ers and the Packers game. What was interesting was 49ers defense really came up big after the first drive. Now, the first drive, Packers marched right down the field. You know the scripted 15, right? You script those plays out, very methodical. They attacked right down the field, 7 points on the board. Looked like it was going to be a long day for the 49ers. But at that point, what I think Green Bay suffered from, their distribution of the football was too narrow. We had in the passing game, Davante Adams and Aaron Jones each catch 9 passes. One other ball was caught, a 6-yard pass by Allen Lazard to move the chains. So realistically, it was very narrow and made it easy to attack. Now, I know that Aaron Jones had the busted covered 75-yard reception. Otherwise, he did not have a great game. He had 12 carries for 41 yards, which included a 14-yard run. So aside from that, they weren't consistently moving the chains. We saw that. And Davante Adams had 4 of his 9 catches on the first drive, so almost half of his production came on that drive. And then what the 49ers did is what we talked about on the weekend video. We said the 49ers have an outstanding zone defense. They can compress things in. They can hit very effectively with their safeties and even their corners, and they can hide their corners by the way they compress that zone. And I noticed they began to bracket within the zone Davante Adams, realizing let someone else beat us because we don't think anybody else can beat us. Being without Marquez Valdes-Scantling, that was a big loss because he's their field stretcher. Whether the ball was cold and Rodgers would get it downfield, another story. But not having him, it put an extra limitation on their offense. Allen Lazard's a very nice player. He's a great blocker. He's a good receiver too, but he's really a phenomenal blocker. Hey, Neil, you're back. Good to see you, man. Appreciate you saying hello. So that's so important. The narrow tree that the Packers used was to their detriment. And then we also talked not just the zone of the 49ers, but we also mentioned that within that zone, they don't blitz. So they get their pressure with their front 4. And we saw it again, that front 4. And Green Bay, understand this too. Their offensive line was not nearly as good as it was last year. They were almost an elite level pass blocking line in 2020. In 2021, they were not great and they were compromised. Bakhtiari was out. He had a little pregame setback. Elgton Jenkins was on the IR for a while, and they were very easy to attack on the edges. And the 49ers front 4 is just a monstrous group, relentless run stoppers, pass rushers. They can take an offense and limit them on their own while the other 7 can play coverage. And so that's exactly how it shook out for them. And Aaron Rodgers, again, with the pressure, didn't have a lot of answers because there were no options to go to. So it was very frustrating for him. And Aaron Rodgers isn't the runner much anymore. Earlier in his career, he was great about, finding opportunities and then running and getting big, important yardage. But at 38 or so years old, that really isn't part of his game anymore. And it was a necessary part in a game like this, but one that wasn't going to be there. But overall, that was their undoing. No worry about being late. You know what? When Alan set this up for me, Alan Soslowski, he set up at 7:10, and we just had a miscommunication. Alan was perfect, 7:10. I meant 7, so I actually didn't realize it. So I'm the one who's running a little bit early. That's all right, though. So 49ers offense. So, all right. First of all, I was very surprised and impressed at the Packers' ability to slow down the 49ers rushing attack. I did not think they would have an answer for it. I thought the 49ers had in their arsenal many adjustments that they could make to anything the Packers front threw at them. I never saw it. Now, the one thing we saw out of 4th and 1 where Elijah Mitchell got stuffed. It was the second play when they pulled their tackle Trent Williams across. And, oh, my God, think about that. The dude's like massive. He's quick, and they're running him in motion, and he turns, and he can just wipe out Rashawn Gary. Imagine that, seeing that coming at you. Well, on that 4th and 1 where Mitchell was stopped, Mitchell all season has been very good at identifying the proper run lane and taking it. What he did on that run, though, if you watch the tape, The whole outside was open when Trent Williams was cutting across. He could have minimum had the first down. I thought there was a touchdown run there potentially, if not a huge chunk game. It was one of the rare times all year where Mitchell misread the play. Hey, he's a rookie. Got to give him something here, right? But nonetheless, I hopefully he doesn't make that mistake next week when they're playing another good defense on the ground in the Rams. So now Jimmy G, God bless him. He did try to give the game away. He threw a number of balls to the outside that corners either weren't looking for. They could have jumped. It could have been catastrophic, but fortune smiled on Jimmy G. He also didn't get helped when George Kittle dropped that pass over the middle, which would have had massive yardage after the catch early in the game, and it may have changed the scoring outlook of the game. And then that interception near the half and the red zone when they were trying to score going into the half, and then fortunately they blocked the field goal after the 75-yard catch from to Aaron Jones. But nonetheless, Jimmy G, like I said, he had his moments, but realistically, for most of the game, he hurt them. And he's injured. He's got an injured shoulder. He got an injured thumb. But Jimmy G was making some critical errors that he got away with. So they were fortunate. Now, what I like about what the 49ers did was down the stretch at the end. When they had that last field goal drive, they went to the guys who mattered most. It was all about Deebo Samuel. It was all about George Kittle. Now, when they go into the game against the Rams next week, they're going to have to think about this. If Eli Mitchell gets going on the ground, fine. But they're really going to have to make this game about Deebo and Kittle. And what the beautiful thing about that is, Jimmy G is at his best, and he makes mistakes there too, but in the middle of the field. Those throws to the outside, especially with the injuries, just don't have what they need to get through. But he can work the middle of the field, especially Deebo off of rub routes and picks, Kittle out of the inline position going downfield. So there is going to be opportunity. But Kyle Shanahan, I think, needs to make a concerted effort to get both of them the ball early and often and let his superstars show up and hang. That's what they need to do. They can't get too cute here. And Brandon Ayuk, when he doesn't see Ramsey, that's a matchup to take advantage of. Now, remember in that last matchup they had, Ayuk went over 100 yards, and then Juwan Jennings had a couple of touchdowns and 90 yards. So they could get to them. Let's get back to this game, though. So, again, a little frustrated that the rushing attack they had didn't have the counter puncher, but don't expect that to be the case. Because Kyle Shanahan, he doesn't make mistakes in the game plan. I don't think I consecutive weeks of that running game. So I think he'll make sure he has his arsenal ready, changes ready when they're needed to be made, especially this teams have played each other twice. Now, it's so hard not to talk about next week, so I'll still go there a little bit. 49ers have beaten the Rams 6 straight times. Every game since McVay and Kyle Shanahan have been the coach, that matchup, it's always gone in the favor of Shanahan. Now, I still say, playing at the Rams, if they play this game 10 times, each team wins 5. So I think it's that close. And I'll break this game down later in the week, so I'll definitely give you a great breakdown on that. But anyway, I think I gave you what I did on the 49ers. However, look, the special teams, got to talk about it, right? Well, the one thing was, and this was talked about, Pro Football Focus brought this up, and Football Outsiders brought this up, that the Packers had a really bad special teams unit. On that last field goal that they lost on, they only had 10 players on the field. Now, not that they would have blocked it, but they certainly had a chance to get some pressure. And then, obviously, the field goal block that they gave up before the half kept them from getting extra points. And then, obviously, the only touchdown the 49ers scored on the block punt and then the walk-in. What I liked about that play, and I could be wrong, the guy who returned the kick for the touchdown, he didn't immediately touch the ball. I think he was concerned. Special teams coach would teach him, if the ball gets blocked and goes past the line of scrimmage, and if you touch it and muff it, it's a fumble, and the Green Bay could pick it up and get a first down just by holding the ball because you had possession. So I think he was looking at that first, and then he realized it's safe. He grabbed it and walked in the end zone. So I think it was very well thought. I think the hesitation is because of that. So they were very, very well coached in the special teams. And look, we don't think about it all the time, but special teams is a big part of games. Now, I really thought, and I know they haven't used Trey Lance much this year. I thought in a playoff game, in some of these short yardage situations, I thought that Kyle Shanahan may have put in a Trey Lance package because with 1 yard to go, like that 4th and 1 that Eli Mitchell got stuffed on, he didn't follow the block. But if Trey Lance is on the field, you still add an element that the defense has to worry. You freeze linebackers and a mobile quarterback. I'm not saying play them all the time, but I'm saying there were situations in an important game like this, especially when the Packers were so good against the run, that they really didn't utilize him well enough. But overall, great credit to the 49ers. They persevered. They won on special teams, and that carried them through. Now, Rams-Bucks. Yes, it was a thriller, right? Ended on the last play of the game with a Matt Gay field goal. But 27-3, they had a lead in this game. And it just, wow. I mean, it wasn't just Tom Brady's greatness. It was all of a sudden the Rams had this big lead, and they're making mistake after mistake. And then when the Bucks would make a mistake, they would go back, the Rams, and make another mistake. They're trying to give this game away. And the funny thing is, if we talked about this game and we said, all right, the Rams are going to turn the ball over 4 times in this game, you're going to assume at least 2 of those were on Matthew Stafford. None of them were. A couple Cam Akers fumbled, the snap that went over Stafford's head, and then Cooper Kupp fumbled one. So it was crazy. Now, let's talk about what went right for the Rams. Now, Matthew Stafford, we talked in our preview. He has shredded the blitz this year. He shredded it again. Now, especially that last play to Cooper Kupp that set up the field goal. So they come in with a blitz. And I heard this somewhere else. I'll share the story with you. It's a phenomenal story. So, yep, Neil, definitely a wild one. So let's think about it this way. That play that was the Cooper Kupp. Apparently, they've run this play in practice a ton of times, but they have a name for it. I don't remember the name. The purpose of Cooper Kupp running that route is only to clear out space underneath. It was never designed to go to him. And Stafford would laugh because he's like, you're never going to get a ball on that play. Well, it just so happened on that play, the Bucks blitzed the guy that would have had Kupp, and the quick read was that, and Kupp got on top of the safety very quick, and so it was an easy throw, but it was not designed to be that play, and I think that's priceless. But Matthew Stafford, and we talked about this before the playoffs, we said that Stafford's been a very streaky quarterback his whole career. If he goes on a 4-game bender, I don't know who's beating him. Now, that's how they play the Chiefs. Maybe another story. But nonetheless, Stafford is playing very well right now. Last 2 games, no interceptions. He had one. He could have been intercepted. I get that. He threw one in the end zone. I think there was a miscommunication there. I don't think it was necessarily his fault. But anyway, it wasn't intercepted, so it doesn't go against him, right? And comes up for 366 yards. Counts for 3 touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 on the ground. And now, first time they met, the Bucks and the Rams, we talked about this in the preview last weekend, that it was the heaviest pass rate McVay had called all year. He definitely called this game in line with what the Rams were doing down the stretch. It was 38 passes to 30 runs. And so he, again, was much more run heavy. And it was to a fault. He's espoused this identity of the team, and they're winning. So it's hard to ignore it and hard to argue it. But the problem I'm seeing is they ran the ball against a Bucs defense that wasn't going to give them anything. And Cam Akers was consistently getting stuffed. And it was one point when it was at the stretch, they needed a first down. And I go, they're going to run this ball to the middle 3 times, and they're going to stop. And that's going to be it. Now, they fumbled one of them, so they didn't even get that far. But the point was, Sean McVay, if he wants to win a Super Bowl, he's got to stop the stubborn thinking. He gets stuck in a way of thinking, and he doesn't deviate from it. I think it was a huge step that he integrated the run later in the season, because he's normally a guy, he'll make adjustments off season. And I thought the adjustment was good because Stafford was struggling. But I think they could have been creative and screened the ball to Cam Akers more. They had an advantage in the screen game that they didn't take advantage of. They instead stubbornly ran in between the tackles. And so Sean McVay is going to have to start thinking about this and make those proper adjustments. Because, again, they're playing the 49ers this week. 49ers now, they stop the run very well, but they're also good against the screen game. So if he gets too happy with the run, that could be their undoing. Now, Cooper Kupp did what Cooper Kupp does besides the fumble. He had 11 targets out of the 38 passes, so very strong target rate. Maybe not as high as in some of the games we saw earlier this year, but obviously clutch, can't cover him. especially in the middle of the field, and he'll continue to have that success as long as they continue to throw the ball his way. And OBJ has really emerged as a great second option for them. They don't throw him the ball a ton, just 8 passes his way, caught 6 for 69, but they're big catches. A lot of them are chain movers, sometimes on third downs, but he definitely has Stafford's confidence. And they didn't use him in the end zone in this game, but they like him as a weapon there. So I think they've really figured out how to maximize his usage on the field. And realistically, Tyler Higbee has been very effective for about 6 weeks. He had the 1-2 touchdown game against the 49ers, but he's pretty much been 40 to 60 yards like 6 straight games, and they're really utilizing him well in the middle of the field. I do expect that to continue. It's become a staple of their offense right now, and it has been very, very positive. It has helped Matthew Stafford too, give him some of those easier throws instead of some more of the say high variance outside throws that he hasn't been making as many of lately. So that's, I think, very positive development. It's helping Stafford. Stafford is he is rolling right now, and he does have a chance to keep that going in another game. Now, on the other side of the ball, again, we talked about this in our pregame show. Tristan Wirfs, I didn't expect him to play, and we found out after the game how serious he needs surgery on it. That's how bad the injury is. But we knew with him out, the problem was going to be he's an outstanding tackle, but the depth on the line isn't there. And you can't help him because Aaron Donald's in the middle. You got Von Miller on one side. You got Leonard Floyd on the other. So 3 legitimate pass rushers. And the minute you take attention away from the middle of slide protection over, now Aaron Donald is a bigger problem. So it's just the superstar factor. The two, especially Leonard Floyd, is very good pass rusher, but obviously Von Miller, even at the stage of his career, and Donald are the two that are superstars. And the Bucs had no answer for that, and it was going to be a problem. And Jalen Ramsey, he did his job. I know that that Mike Evans got the long touchdown, but other than that, he was 7 for 64 on 15 targets, and you got to take that all day. Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame type player. And yes, the long touchdown, that counts as part of it. Great play. It helped him get back in the game. But for the meat and potatoes of that game, while a 27-3 lead is being built, Mike Evans was not moving the chains for them. He was not sustaining drives for them. And so it was basically, he's a great player, but Jalen Ramsey did his job. And he wasn't on him every snap. He was on him most. I was surprised. I saw a visible frustration on his part sometimes when he wasn't put on him and he was moved to the other side. It was kind of foolish at any point to move him off, but nonetheless, it was effective. Mike Evans, pro's pro. Like I said, even the 7 for 64 before the 55-yard touchdown, it was what he could do with all the attention he had. And Brady had to throw it to him. It's clear he didn't have a lot of trust in his other receivers, threw Gronk quite a bit. He had 11 targets, and, I want to say he could have gotten more, but 11 is a lot. But Brady threw 54 passes. And we said earlier in our preview that the Rams were now 2 safeties. And so it was an attack point that Gronk is the one who had the mismatch. And when they went to him, it was very clearly there. So that said, Brady was under tremendous pressure. We understand Tom Brady is not the guy who wants to get hit, and nobody wants to get hit, right? And he was getting the ball out quickly because that rush was just coming time after time, making him miserable. So we called this before the game. It was not going to be a good gamester for him. It was very fortunate they made a furious comeback fueled on 4 Rams fumbles, and they did what they could, but ultimately it was just too much to overcome. The game of the day, Chiefs and the Bills. I will tell you this. On the punt return, Tyreek Hill had, I legitimately got goosebumps. It was amazing. Just when you have an elite playmaker on special teams. I remember back in the day, Deion Sanders would occasionally return to punts, and the whole place would get quiet, just wanting to see what he would do. Tyreek Hill, same deal. It was electric. He starts running to the left and just hits the brakes. Everybody's going this way. He cuts back. Oh, my goodness. He kind of tripped over his own feet. I think he could have had a touchdown there, but he had a little bit of a little trip, and that was something. But what do we say about this game? I guess we'll start with the Bills side of the ball. Josh Allen, man, what a heck of a game. What a heck of a playoffs he had. You hate to see him go home. Bulldozer in the run game. he gets to the second level and he's just bigger and stronger than the guys who are hitting him. And it was just so impressive. I mean, no player playing that game deserves to lose. And it's just so unfortunate to see a great player have a great game. And evading the rush, he does that. He only got sacked twice, but he was under pressure a lot and he made it work. Big plays. I mean, I don't know what else to say. The superlatives can't stop. It's so impossible to think that they scored with 13 seconds left and there was enough time on the clock. Oh, good. Mr. Fantastic FFB. The Chiefs got even hurt trying to hit. Yeah, they did. 100% correct. And Neil on YouTube and Twitter. Yes. Oh, yeah. You mentioned Devin Hester. He was a beast. He's nominated for the Hall of Fame. And look, Devin Hester, he probably should go into the first ballot. And somebody say, well, kick returner, how many snaps? He had an impact on the game. And I always think when a player has a unique impact on the game, I think he needs to be in the Hall of Fame like right away because the outliers, right? The outliers belong. Devin Hester, it was insane. And he played in part of the time where there were still kickers kicking away from kick returners, and it still didn't stop them. And then Mr. Fantastic FFBS, should the overtime rules change? It's a great point. How do you have this game and not have the Bills touch the ball, right? I mean, everybody, you felt like you were gypped a little bit, unless you were a Chiefs fan and you were real happy. I mean, I tweeted right before, I think I texted somebody right before overtime. I go, well, whoever wins the coin flip wins the game. And let's understand why. Why did I know whoever was going to get the coin flip was going to score a touchdown, not a field goal? The defenses. The defenses were torched. The passing game got high octane, especially down the stretch, those fast and furious last 5 minutes or so of the game. The defenders were gassed. And the Bills rotate pass rushers, so that part was fine. It was the players in the secondary. They were running sprints, play after play after play, and it was going to be a problem. You see, the wide receivers, like, for instance, we saw Tyreek Hill have a long play, and he went to the sidelines for a play. He got a rest. Well, think about it. The cornerbacks and starting safeties, they're not going out. You can't put them off the field. You don't have a replacement that can sub in for them that's worth it. So receivers, you have guys who are functional. So that was the problem with the overtime and why whoever had the ball first is likely going to score unless there was a stupid error. So yes, they were, and you could tell that. Wow. So should the overtime rules change? I don't know what they should be, but I don't want to see a game like this and not see the other team on the field. Now, could they both have scored 5 straight times when we had been watching TV for 4 hours or at the game for 4 hours? Maybe it'd be worth it, right? So, yes, I think the rules should change, but I don't know what they should be changed to. And when they talk about player safety and things, the more tired players get. Let's say the overtime rules all season changed, and let's say there was a game where they just couldn't break the tie, however long that went. And now you have tired players playing tired and taking hits. Sometimes you get hurt. So it's such a tough call. But I agree. They need to change. I'm just not smart enough to come up with what that change should be. But I agree. It's a great question. Devin Singletary, they used him well down the stretch. They played the fullback, Reggie Gilliam, a lot more down the stretch. I think that really helped their run game a bit. And but Devin Singletary, it just wasn't working in this game. 10 carries, 26 yards. He had a couple decent runs. I know he had like a 7-yard run, something like this. That was fine enough, but he never got going. And it was one of those games, you know what? At some point, you're like, it was working for a while, but we're playing the Chiefs here. So maybe Josh Allen does the running, and maybe we just, use the passing game more. Now, how do you argue? They scored 36 points in regulation. So it's hard to argue. But it's almost like I talked back with the Rams and Sean McVay. They got a little too stubborn with an approach they've been using, right? And that's, I think, happening. I think they scored 36 points. I'm not knocking them at all. They're a great job, right? But again, they needed to score one more point in regulation. So I just think that, and the Chiefs made mistakes too. Understand that. So let's see, Mr. Fantastic FFB, the college football rules make the most sense. I don't watch a lot of college football. I know that they can go back and forth and have multiple possessions. So as long as it was something that with player safety wasn't going to keep the players, like say 3-4 times a year, if they go to overtime out for a crazy amount of time, then I think it'd be a great idea. Maybe it's just, playoffs. You're right. I love that for the playoffs for sure. Yeah. Regular season, you could have two separate sets of rules. You could have one for the regular season and one for I agree with that because yes, the magnitude of the postseason obviously being what it is, I think it's a great idea. Score the other team. Yeah. I like it. I mean, it's the playoffs, right? Yeah. Right. And everybody deserves that. The players deserve that. The fans deserve that. NFL's would make money. They're going to get more commercials. I think everybody wins there. I like that idea. So, all right. Now, Isaiah Mckenzie, we talked about him in our pregame as well, that he was only heavily used in the 2 New England games. And I thought that his role was not one that was going to be a substantial part. And it wasn't. He wasn't really used much. He had a few touches. Nice player. But I think right now, I think that was a stretch thinking he would automatically be a factor in this game. Now, boy, Gabe Davis. Now, I whiffed on a lot, but I remember I was on the Sirius show Sunday, and Alan Soslowski said, if you're playing the captain in the one-game DraftKings, the one bill I gave was Gabe Davis, but the reason was he was one of the only ones that had a reasonable salary who I thought would be involved in the game. Yeah, Gabe Davis was my breakout player this year, but he never could crack the starting lineup, and I don't know why. To me, he was at this. I love Manny Sanders, but I just thought Gabe Davis was like a natural fit for what they do. But I think now the seal's broken. I don't think they're going to be going away from him. Coles Beasley's a free agent anyway. I imagine he goes away, and I'm not sure if Sanders signed for a second year. Mr. Fantastic FFB, hockey has different rules for posting. Perfect. Then there's precedent, and that's always helpful. So, yeah, it was all about Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, it was amazing. And that the fact that, a lot of his catches were in the middle of the field. And when the Honey Badger went out, Tyrann Mathieu, that was a big injury for the Chiefs. And understand the Chiefs were also without Rashad Fenton, their corner. He's missed a couple games. He's been really good. Maybe their best corner this year. And so they were down a couple of weapons here. And they were obviously making it a point to take Diggs out. In the meantime, Davis was able to clean up, and he did very well. On just 10 targets, goes over 200 yards. Wow. And he made the defender look silly on that touchdown that we thought won the game. So Gabe Davis, like I said, took advantage of great quarterback play, outclassed the secondary. Just a great breakout game for him. Young man, I think he's going to have a very nice NFL career, not because of this game, because I believed him even going into the season. Just didn't get to work. Cole Beasley was productive. He hadn't been much this year, but they utilize him very well to move the chains. Thought they used him smartly. Sanders tailed off as he did since week 4. We haven't really seen much of him since then, maybe week 7. But in the second half, he did like literally nothing. Surprised that Dawson Knox was not used much in this game. I know he had a drop, only had 4 targets, less than 10 yards. I was a little surprised by that. But it's, again, hard to argue with a team that scores 36 points. A lot of those came late, right? But overall, Josh Allen just proved superstar quarterback. I love what he did. Now, Chiefs side of the ball. I heard that Mahomes had 177 yards, like after there were like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter through overtime, something like that. Oh my God. Absolutely insane. And now what I liked about him was the playoff Mahomes, where he runs more than he had. And he was under a lot of pressure. The Bills put this team together to beat the Chiefs. And they brought in a lot of passers. They rotated. They had always had a good pass rush. But Mahomes just basically broke it. It was like, okay, well, you're going to rush. And he just kept buying time, run when he needs to run. And he just really showed. And what I like best, I think I said that, everybody, I like this best too. Middle of the season, they hit that slump. And he was not taking what the defense were giving. We saw the 2 high shells. They were taking away the deep play, and he was not patient taking the underneath stuff. He matured as the season went on. And as the games went on, he was taking what the defenses gave him. This was a beautiful show of force. It wasn't bombs away to Tyreek Hill. The touchdown, it was a mid-level crosser, and the work was done after the catch. Now, I think they also added better play design to beat some of these zones. I was calling the 3-by-1 stacks. They ran a lot of those, and they were getting good route combinations to get the players into space, to allow them to get through those holes in the zone. And then obviously when Tyreek Hill gets the ball, the burners are just so insane. To think he is that much faster than all the other players on the field. On that crosser, he just ran by everybody. People had angles on him. Did not matter. That was electrifying football. And again, whatever you think of him personally, I know he had some off the field issues 2 or 3 years ago. But in terms of his talent, it is so important to appreciate players like this. You're not going to see many of them. They changed the NFL. And that was really great. And I was happy to see Jerick McKinnon. We talked about him in our pregame show too, that he wasn't going away. His speed as an element to this offense that is desperately needed right now. When the teams are playing the zone against them, they need the screens. They need the fast running back to at least threaten the linebackers. And he ended up playing significantly more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And so I think for the rest of the playoffs, Jerick McKinnon is a thing. Now, he didn't do much in a running game, but again, a couple of key receptions, 5 for 54, 7 targets, a couple of them moved the chains. One, he had that little step out of bounds. They ended up recovering from that, but that was important. And Byron Pringle, 7 targets. He did catch a touchdown, but he has been an integral part of their offense for well over a month now. And a lot of people in fantasy contests for the playoffs were talking about Mecole Hardman, but Pringle's the guy that's getting more run and opportunities, and he's shown to do very well with those. And obviously Travis Kelce, he's had more down games this season than in the past, and he did put up a lot of yardage late. But look, when they need him, they know he's there. The touchdown at the end, and it's so important that his veteran experience in the 3-by-1 sets, they got him. They would start 3-by-1, and they would move him out from the tight end position into the interior slot on the single side, and they were creating some real nice mismatches for him there. Well, so the coaching is just top shelf, helping the receivers get space. Mr. Fantastic FFB, people have been saying has been their favorite playoff game of all time. Oh man, this is right there. I remember the game when T.O. caught the touchdown pass against the Packers. I'm a T.O. apologist. I love T.O. And to me, he was like the gold standard of receivers. I know Jerry Rice is the man, and I'm not going to argue that. But just watching T.O., it was one of those things where I loved the game. That game was back and forth, some real big hitting in that game. And then there's the great Steve Young pass into maybe 4 defenders. That definitely rivals it. But this game, it was crazy because this game was trending toward the under with like 4 minutes left. It was pretty likely going to be under. And then the fourth quarter ends up with like 20 more points. It was insane. And then overtime. So it ended up being crazy. But it's so hard. I always try to enjoy the games and trying to remember like which ones are memorable. But that one stuck. The Packers and the 49ers, that one really stuck to me. I think that's the best I'm going to go with that. It's so hard to pick out a game. This one for right now, very hard to argue. And it was the level of players on both sides. We have Josh Allen on one side, superstar. Maybe I love Stephon Diggs, but in this game he really didn't play that. Mr. Fantastic, you had the under for quite a while until all hell broke loose late, but you made the right bet. It just didn't work out late. And then obviously you've got Mahomes, Kelce, Hill. I mean, to have that superstar power in one game and have all of them play well. And then you get the bonus of the Gabe Davis show where he shows up and has the best game of them all, the best playoff game by a skill position non-quarterback ever. 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. We haven't seen that. I mean, I don't have the records in front of me, but nobody's touched that. 204? I don't think so. I don't think he's ever scored 4 touchdowns as a receiver. But then the 200 yards, that was insane. But and that was it. And then the pace of the game down the stretch. I mean, and I feel bad if somebody was like just so heavy on one team that they couldn't enjoy the game because their team was either losing, and at some point both were losing. If you were able just to watch a game and just enjoy it, I think that was the biggest bonus of them all. Now, I don't have much else. If anybody has questions, go ahead and ask. But I am going to break these games down next week. I'm going to do the stream Sunday, 11 Eastern. So I'll give you a few hours before the game. If you can't catch it right away, I'll have these broken down. Well, if you have questions during the week, tweet me out at Jim Coventry NFL. I'd be glad to answer questions. I'll be breaking these down on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel 87 on both Saturday and Sunday. That show is from 1 to 3 Eastern. Be breaking out Mario Puig. That'll be awesome. And Saturday it'll be awesome on Sunday with Jeff Erickson. So I think some great breakdowns there. But I'm definitely looking forward to this and in the live stream. And I'll always answer questions on the live stream if you have them. Neil, appreciate you, man. Thank you for showing up. All right, everybody, have a wonderful night. If you have questions, again, hit me up. I'll be glad to answer them. And I will see everybody Sunday, 11 Eastern, if not sooner. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, Neil. You as well.